Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex. And by now you've heard that there's a lot of problems with the Olympians epic quest. There is trouble among the gods because we actually didn't get 5 gods. We got 2 gods and then 3 humans because of how bad not only the characters are, but their kits, their effects, their artifacts, etc. It's a disaster, a colossal disaster, almost top to bottom, with just Hades and Zeus holding back the onslaught of just complete garbage. But then I saw something on Reddit, of all places, that got me thinking that it might be even worse. And kudos to this person, False Aladdin, who posted this, but they made a really clever comparison to the Eternals. Now, I'm essentially going to expand on their comparison, but I think this is really important because rather than just sitting here and saying like, oh, you know, Hercules feels really bad, I'm rank this or rank that, I have this build or that build, and he's not doing very well. It's more important to compare the entirety of the epic quest to something we got 4 years ago. And we know that in mobile games there has to be power creep. That's why a uniform or a character from 2025 is much better than a uniform or character from 2015. That's 10 years later. It has to be better. It has to be stronger because the content is so much more difficult than it used to be. You know, world bosses nowadays start with 20, 30 million HP. If you go back and look at videos from when I started my channel, they had 500,000. So of course, the HP and the defense and the attack of the enemies goes up because you're getting stronger. So I went down that rabbit hole and I decided to compare the Olympus epic quest to the Eternals epic quest from 2021. And I know this just is going to look like a ugly, you know, list or whatever Excel spreadsheet, but this is all of the what I deem to be the most important features of these characters. I got that, whether I think they're a DPS or not, ranked from, you know, S tier down to like F tier. What's their leadership? Do they have any support buffs? What are they? Do they have a debuff cleanse, which we know is so important for PvP? Do they have iframe ignore? What are their base stats? Because that's another important indicator of value in terms of, you know, characters getting stronger over the years, because their base stats have to go up to keep up with the sort of power creep. Do they have healing and how much? Do they have damage reduction and how much? What's their artifact like? And are they meta in the year that they're released? Now, I know the dust has barely settled on this update, but the Eternals were meta pretty early on. And in order for you to understand the magnitude of why we chose the Eternals, I actually scrolled back in my channel 4 years. 4 years. Now, just as a reminder, guys, in the update that they launched, I know he's scary, just don't look. Okay, keep your eyes on the other side of the screen. In the update that they launched the Eternals, they actually launched a survey 4 years ago where they asked the players questions about the game. And they presumably used these surveys to improve the game. And you know what? I would say that the surveys have served the game well, because 2022, 2023 were pretty good years for the game, and it's only started to go down in 2024 and now 2025. But that's not really, you know, I just want to sort of set the stage here. Really what we're talking about is the actual quest. So we actually released this video back in November of 2021 where we said that Thena was terrible. And she was terrible. She was really bad. She didn't have a heal. She didn't have damage reduction. She was dying in content that she shouldn't be dying in. She didn't have additional pierce. She was just a very weak character, and it was quite... I think actually she did have additional pierce, but it was very disappointing. Guess what? A week later, November 30th, they drop the next update, and they have Thena buffs. They buffed Thena in the very next patch. So I want to compare the quality of updates that we used to get with the quality of updates that we are getting now. And look at this rework for Thena. They reworked her ultimate skill, giving it iframe ignore and increasing the increased attack buff from 50% to 100%. They doubled the damage proc. They gave her a brand new ignore dodge buff. They gave her a flat 20% heal. They changed a bunch of stuff on her base kit and on her uniform, okay? And then to highlight just how good the Eternals were at the time and why it matters so much to how bad the Olympians are, this is a tier list that I did. Again, I know I'm kind of cherry picking my own content, but it's just the easiest to find because I know where it is. December 6th, so about a month and a half after they came to the game. And you can see Makkari is right at the top there. In the next category, you have Gilgamesh, Cersei, and Thena. Kingo maybe is overrated there. But you have 4 of the Eternals in the first 2 categories, meta-defining and meta-gods. And then a couple, like maybe a week later, less than a week later, the defenders were dominating PvP, dominating the meta with CTP builds, with at the time the best CTP builds. Absolutely crushing the meta. And you can't see because it's cut off here, but I'm fighting against Sentry and Dr. Doom 3099. And you go ahead 6 months to March of the next year. And guess what? Makkari is still at the top. Thena is still at the top. Gilgamesh is still there, and Cersei is still there. So they are still dominating 6 months later, the meta. I went a year later, October 2022, a year after the Eternals Epic Quest. This is when they introduced Tier 4. So there was a seismic shift in the value of characters. And still, Makkari is near the top of meta gods, despite a Tier 4 Black Widow. Makkari is near the top of meta gods, and Cersei is in meta-ish. Understandably, you know, Thena and Gilgamesh are gone now. They're just lead supports, but there were still meta characters. Contrast that with what we have now, which is that there's no doubt in my mind that outside of Zeus and Hades, there's no meta. There's no meta at all. And will they be meta in a year? I don't even know if they're going to be meta in 6 months. Maybe not. It's absolutely crazy. But the tail of the tape is really where things get crazy. I want to set this up for you guys because this is where it truly gets disturbing. The first comparison is going to be Cersei versus Aphrodite, because both of these female heroes are situated as the support, cleanse, linchpin, kind of keystone members of a PvP build team for their respective groups, Eternals or Olympians. And each of them provides a pretty startlingly strong buff for their tribe. Cersei gives Eternals 30% attack, 30% increased damage to supervillains, and minus 30% incoming damage from supervillains, whereas Aphrodite gives Olympians 45% increased damage to supervillains and 35% decreased incoming damage from supervillains. Now, you can kind of debate which one is stronger. Perhaps Aphrodite's is a little bit stronger because we have so many ways to get 30% attack that it's not quite as good, and 45% damage is 50% more than the 30 damage. So I would give the edge here to Aphrodite, but it is pretty close as far as Cersei and Aphrodite. However, if we look a little bit closer, the debuff cleanse is really where we start to diverge. Cersei has the debuff cleanse on her passive, not on her leadership, which means you can and should use Cersei not in the leadership position. You can also use Cersei for things like Otherworld Battle, where you have 5 characters on the team. Can you use Aphrodite for Otherworld Battle? You can, but you're going to waste another slot bringing Wasp or bringing Angel or bringing Strife or someone else that can provide debuff cleanse, because her cleanse doesn't work because it's only on her leadership. Additionally, that negates any value that you would gain from Hercules' HP leadership or any other leadership in the game. So one of the telltale signs that the Eternals did so well in PvP is because you could pair Cersei and Gilgamesh, but remember, Gilgamesh has the 50% increase defense to all allies. And so you could stack that 50% defense lead from Gilgamesh with Cersei's cleanse, and she'd be giving 30% attack, which is sort of like a mini leadership. With Aphrodite, you're kind of just screwed. You have to use her lead. So I have to give the overwhelming victory here to Cersei because of how much better her cleanse is. And remember, her cleanse is better 4 years ago. 4 years ago. How did the devs make this mistake? If we take a look at the base stats here, yes, you can see that Aphrodite has slightly higher base stats, and particularly HP. She has about 8,000 more base HP. But remember, Cersei has an entire uniform to go along with that. Let's take a look at the healing. Cersei, if we take a look at the healing, then of course Aphrodite gets the edge here because she has double the healing of Cersei, 30% over 15. However, Aphrodite has 0 damage reduction, whereas Cersei has 30% damage reduction. I don't know about you, but 30% damage reduction is going to mean a lot less damage taken, even if you're healing for half as much. How about the artifact? Well, let's take a look. Cersei's artifact is Revive. She literally revives, which is perfect for awakening characters. What's Aphrodite's artifact? Oh, ignore dodge and increase attack. Well, gee, it's going to be hard to see who wins this one. Of course, it is Cersei. And believe it or not, again, not just in a support role, but also as a DPS role, Cersei was actually meta for PvP for at least a year, if not 2 or 3. Aphrodite's never going to be meta for PvP. Never. Not even for 5 seconds, unless they make massive sweeping buffs. So who is the winner here? Of course, it has to be Cersei. It has to be. Taking a look at the next matchup, we're going to go Gilgamesh versus Hercules because they're both combat male heroes. They both have auto healing, and they're meant to be the secondary PvP character to be paired together with that initial Cersei Aphrodite combo. So although Gilgamesh's DPS was not as good at the time as Cersei's or others, I still think for its time in the game, it was better than Hercules because Gilgamesh, given enough ramp up, given enough accumulation, could kill some of the premier PvP characters like Sentry twice. Hercules is not even sniffing 1 Sentry kill. So personally, I give the lead to Gilgamesh, but I'm not gonna, give this one a grade or give this one a winner because it's kind of based on personal preference. How about leadership? This one I think is kind of a wash because 40% HP is really good, but 50% all defense is also really good. I think some people would think that 40% HP is a little bit better, so I can sort of give the edge, like a 60-40 situation to Hercules, but let's move on. Do they have a support buff? Believe it or not, Gilgamesh had a support buff, and it wasn't just a meager, like, one-liner. 35% defense to Eternal's allies, minus 15% chain hit damage, and 80% reduction in physical reflect. That is an insanely good support buff. This is absolutely bonkers support buff. That's like Agent Venom had, intercourse with another character. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Do they both have iframe ignore? Yes, they do. Let's move on here. Base stats. How are the base stats looking? Believe it or not, Gilgamesh has higher base attack than a tier 370 Hercules. Now, I know what you're going to say, but Hercules can go to tier 4, Alex. It's not a fair comparison. Well, we're going to compare them based on where they can both fit in. Now, I know tier 3s and transcendent characters are different. They're not exactly the same, but it's absolutely wild to me. It's startling to me that Gilgamesh had almost 10,000 more HP. He has basically all his base stats are higher. All of them. 4 years ago, on top of all the buffs. This is what killed me, though. He has better healing. That's right. Gilgamesh heals for 6% per second when he's under 99%. Hercules only heals for 5. You're telling me Gilgamesh is tankier than Hercules? And keep in mind, Hercules is native tier 2. So if you're still not convinced about the base stats, a native tier 2, tier 3 has lower base stats than a regular native tier 1 transcended character. Yeah. How about the damage reduction? Surprisingly, they're both the same at 45%. And I bet the devs had this at less than 45%. And then they realized Gilgamesh was 45, so they had to do it to him. Anyways, what about the artifact? Because, damage to heroes and villains is really good for Hercules. Oh, what's that? When Gilgamesh is under 50%, he heals for up to 80 or 90%. And he increases his max HP by 75% for like 10 seconds. So he gets like giga tanky when he goes under 50%. Which is kind of like a pseudo immortality. Wow, I think I got to give the edge, you guessed it, to Gilgamesh. And who was meta for PvE or PvP? Gilgamesh. Guess what? Gilgamesh is the winner. We're 2-0 right now for the Eternals. Next up, we have Hades and Makkari. And while this is not a clear one-for-one comparison because Hades is the deluxe pack character and Makkari is just one of the characters that you have to pay crystals for, I think they are the most fitting comparison because they both come in as Alliance Battle meta characters. So to compare them here, I think they're both very, very good DPSs for the time that they were released, 2021, 2025. I gotta give the edge here to Hades. He does have a much better leadership, although it is only flame damage. It is all allies, so it's very good. None of them have a support buff. None of them have a cleanse. Neither of them have iframe ignore, which I thought was pretty interesting. The base stats tells you that these characters were modeled pretty closely. However, you actually give the edge to Makkari here. Slightly higher attack, much higher defenses, and more HP. Again, I think this is absolutely bananas given the fact that we know Makkari is a speed type, and speed types have the lowest base stats. The healing is actually tied at 30% apiece, although Makkari's is tied to her uniform and tied to her pressing a skill, which is a little bit awkward, but it basically works out to just pressing a skill and getting a heal anyways. She actually has more damage reduction than Hades has. I don't even know. She also has a counterattack, but no iframe. We're not going to really go there. And then her artifact increases her damage to enemies with 50% HP or higher, which is clearly synergistic with ABX ABL. Now, they gave this artifact to Athena, but there was no way under any circumstances I was going to compare Athena to Makkari, because we know Makkari would blitz Athena into pieces. That was like, there was no way that comparison was ever happening. So this one, I still have to give the edge to Makkari because it would just made so much sense. This is just a terrible artifact that should not be given to premium characters. This one, I think, is going to be a wash. I think people may actually argue Hades, but I think you actually have to give it to Makkari, because at the time when Makkari came out, she was unequivocally, without a doubt, she was meta. She was 100% meta for ABX. ABL didn't exist then. She was 100% meta for ABX. She was blowing up those stages, those speed hero stages, before Luna would eventually make her return. Or actually it was like it was like Gamora and then Spider-Gwen first. But anyways, or other way around. Whereas Hades, while he is meta, is basically just taking 1 day away from Loki, and that's not even for all players. It was undoubtedly, everyone had to adopt Makkari because she was just that good. Hell, even I learned how to play her. And so we come to the ultimate characters for their respective epic quests. This one was easier to pair up because it's obvious Thena can only be unlocked and gotten once you've completed the other 5 Eternals, just like Zeus can only be unlocked and built up once you've built up, you know, Hades, Aphrodite, Athena, Hercules, etc. Now again, DPS is kind of a subjective thing, and it's for their time. It's not for 2025, because obviously I know Zeus does more damage than Thena in 2025. Leadership, I actually have to give the edge to Thena here. 50% attack and 20% defense versus just 60% lightning damage. And this is just not that uncommon. I mean, Lincoln Campbell has this leadership. He would be a lot more flexible as a leadership if his leadership was just 50% like if his leadership was the same as Thena's. Like, I actually prefer Thena's. 50% attack and 20% defense is honestly not bad. So that's kind of crazy. Neither of them have support buff. Neither of them have cleanse. Zeus does have Eye from Ignore that Thena doesn't have, so he does get the big W there, so that is quite nice. Then if we look at the base stats, he does edge her out, and again, we're comparing tier 3 to tier 3. He's only level 70, but he edges her out in essentially every category, so I do have to give him the edge on this one, clear cut. However, it starts to get muddy as we continue. He does have more healing than Thena. He has 30 versus 20, but she has almost double the damage reduction. 35% to his 20. What were the devs smoking in 2025 to make this only 20%? Like, what is this? This is crazy to me. For a unlocked native tier 2 ultimate epic quest character, Zeus, king of the gods. Then you look at their artifact, it's the same. This is probably the most depressing thing. Yeah. Like, we can understand this artifact being bad because remember, the Eternals came out right after artifacts had come out. They're some of the first artifacts in the game. You can farm them from their epic quest because of how new it was. They've had 4 years since then to make artifacts better and to realize how useless this artifact is. Have they changed their ways? Absolutely not. Are they both meta for PvE? Yeah, probably. The winner here, honestly, it's a toss-up. It's really a toss-up. And that's kind of the most depressing thing. We don't have one single clear winner for the Olympians. And we have clear winners for the Eternals in at least 2 categories. Even if you 50-50 on Makkari's Hades, there's no doubt in my mind that Gilgamesh made a way bigger impact on PvP than Hercules, and Cersei makes a way, way bigger impact on PvP than Aphrodite. To this day, you can still find Cersei being used if enough characters are banned in Otherworld Battle. You will never find this chick in Otherworld Battle. It is an abomination. This is it's startling to me how badly they screwed this up, how badly they imbalanced these characters 4 years later. So I had to put the pen to paper. I had to put these matchups here so that you can see clearly that the devs are essentially they're not even phoning it in. They're throwing. They're intentionally throwing on this update. And it's really sad because it's already been 3 years. We passed the 3-year mark in May for tier 4, which means tier 5, the next big spike, could be on the horizon within a year. So if the Olympians are bad now, they're going to be completely forgotten in 6 months. If tier 5 actually comes next year for May in anticipation of Avengers Doomsday, It's over for Hercules. He's not even good now, and he's tier 4. Imagine if there's something beyond tier 4 in elite gear. There's some new thing, and he doesn't have it. This is a Shadowland. You're looking at a Shadowland native tier 2 in 2025. Absolutely despicable. Like just disgusting. Just disgusting how bad this is. And it's really, really sad. It is really sad. I don't know what to say. I know that listen, to play devil's advocate here, I know that the Eternals Epic Quest cost more crystals because you had to buy Makkari and you had to buy Gilgamesh, and then you also had to buy all of their uniforms. I understand that. But remember, a lot of the buffs that they have are not tied to their uniforms. These characters still exist, right? Cersei still has that artifact without her uniform, right? She still has that passive without her uniform. So although they are much better with their uniforms, don't get me wrong, they were given the blueprints to be good from day one, with good support passives, with synergistic buffs, and with good artifacts. The Olympians were never given a chance because they have terrible supports, they have non-synergistic buffs, and they have absolutely garbage tier artifacts. This is a throw. This is just all in all a complete throw. And it just blows my mind. I think the thing that I'm most upset about is that you actually don't want to use this team like this. Like, not even like this, but for example, like this. You actually don't want to use this team. This team is actually so bad because of how bad Aphrodite is. You're compelled to use her leadership because of the debuffs cleanse, but you're actually better off doing this and then just bringing in Wasp. So even in 2025, they couldn't put together a competent 3-player PvP team for the Olympians. Why bother to give them a tag? Why bother? Why bother to give them an ability tag? Why bother to give them unique buffs if they're not even good? If they're not even going to synergize properly? It's insanity. It's insanity. So, you know, the easiest solution to this is just copy and paste the Eternals. And I always like easy solutions for Marvel Future Fight because I know the devs struggle to think and think coherently. So all they have to do is just copy and paste. You see Gilgamesh's artifact? Just copy and paste that. Imagine Hercules has this artifact. When his HP drops below 40%, boom, he gets an 80% heal, and his HP goes up by 75% for 16 seconds. And it's not actually 75, it's way higher, because it's also another 0.1% of his instinct. So it's probably closer to 100%, or whatever, like 90%. Yeah, for 16 seconds. Almost doubling his HP. Very nice, very nice. Oh, what's that? Aphrodite's not that good? Oh, yo, just copy and paste, man. Just copy and paste. Just give Aphrodite revive and change her cleanse to be on a passive so you can use them in Otherworld Battle. Do you know why they'd be really good in Otherworld Battle right now? Because you gave a bunch of buffs to aliens, and guess what? They're all aliens. You know what's ironic about this? Universal and Alien. You know who would be really good with these buffs 4 years ago? The Eternals. You know who's not good with these buffs in 2025? The Olympians. You know why? Because you screwed up. Because the devs screwed up. Anyways, it's absolutely bananas. I don't know what else to say. It's despicable. Yeah, it really frustrates me. Anyways, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching the video. Smash the like button if you're enjoying the content, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.